I found the job posting by accident. It was a Thursday afternoon. Gray, unremarkable. The kind of day that passes without asking for attention. I was finishing a report, sipping lukewarm coffee, and procrastinating like everyone else. Scrolling through LinkedIn. Casual, aimless. Then I saw it. Job opening. Senior Operations Manager, confidential company, New York. I clicked out of curiosity, not suspicion. But when I read the description, my blood ran cold. It was my job. Word for word, my team, my responsibilities. Even the software platforms I had personally integrated over the past year were listed like bullet points on a stranger's resume. The salary was lower than mine, which made it worse. They weren't just replacing me, they were downgrading me, quietly, cheaply. For a second, I just stared at the screen. I thought maybe it was a mistake. A duplicate posting. Maybe someone had forgotten to take it down after my promotion. But deep down, I knew better. You don't forget to remove something like that. Not in a company this meticulous. I refreshed the page. Still there. Same posting. Same betrayal. My name is Anna Reed. I'd been with Ferris & Cole for 6.5 years. I started as a temp, grew into management, took over operations during the worst supply crisis we'd ever seen, and didn't take a vacation for 4 years straight. I knew this company. I bled for it. And yet, they posted my job while I was still sitting at my desk. At 5:02 p.m., I printed out the listing and walked it straight into my boss's office. Gregory Lyman, Vice President of Operations. 52nd. Wears loafers without socks and thinks it makes him approachable. He didn't look up when I entered. I need a minute, I said, calm. Too calm. He waved me toward a chair, annoyed. What's up? I slid the paper across his desk. He glanced at it, squinted, and smirked. Oh, that, he said, tapping it with one finger. Yeah, saw that earlier today. Must be a glitch or something. He chuckled, laughed, like this was funny. A glitch. A job listing prepared, polished, and published with HR approval. Just a hiccup in the system. Right, I said. I smiled, just enough to make him slightly uncomfortable. These things happen. He shrugged, already turning back to his emails. Anyway, let's circle up next week. Lot going on. I stood. Sure, I said. I'll circle back. He didn't see the shift in my expression, didn't hear the weight behind those 3 words, didn't notice that I hadn't sat down at all. When I got back to my desk, I closed out all my windows except one, the secure one, the one that connected me directly to the outside consultant the board had hired last year to assess internal vulnerabilities during our rapid expansion. I still had his number, because I was the one who saved the company from imploding during the onboarding fiasco. Because I was the one who fixed things Gregory had broken quietly behind the scenes. I didn't text. I didn't email. I called. Anna. He answered on the second ring, sounding surprised. I need 5 minutes, I said. He gave me 15. That night I didn't sleep much. Not because I was angry, although I was, but because I had decisions to make. I could leave quietly. Let them win. Let Gregory replace me with someone cheaper and call it strategy, or I could show them what happened when you tried to erase someone without realizing what they were holding in place. By morning, I had made my choice. I got up, made coffee, showered, and dressed like I was heading to a negotiation, not a regular Friday. Charcoal blazer, gold pin, confidence like armor, calm like a loaded weapon. At 7:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Anna, it's Elaine Hastings from the board. I didn't respond immediately. She continued. I got a call last night about Gregory, about some discrepancies. Can you come in early? I glanced at the clock. I'm already on my way. As I walked into the lobby, the receptionist stood a little straighter than usual. People in the elevator avoided eye contact. The quiet kind of panic had already started to set in. By the time I reached the executive floor, I knew one thing for certain. Gregory's glitch was about to crash the whole system. And Monday? Monday was going to be fun. Elaine Hastings didn't do pleasantries. She was the kind of board member who showed up twice a quarter, said little, but knew exactly who missed a deadline and who padded a budget. So when she called me before 8 a.m., I knew it wasn't a social check-in. Her assistant met me in the lobby and ushered me into the executive boardroom. No Greg, no other VPs, just Elaine, seated at the far end of the long walnut table, 2 folders in front of her and a laptop open at a sharp angle. She didn't stand when I walked in, didn't smile either, just motioned for me to sit. "I'm going to ask you some questions, Anna," she said calmly, "and I need you to answer them without trying to protect anyone. Do you understand?" I nodded once. "I understand." She turned her laptop toward me. A spreadsheet was open. Budget allocations, vendor payments, bonus structures. My name wasn't on it, but Gregory's was. In bold, several times. "Did you authorize these payments to Venmar Logistics?" she asked, pointing. I leaned forward. We cut ties with Venmar 6 months ago. They were flagged for repeated delays and falsified delivery times. I recommended alternate vendors, and Greg signed off. Elaine clicked her mouse. "That's what I thought. The problem is, these payments were processed last month." I didn't blink. "I didn't approve them." She nodded slightly. "And this performance bonus structure? Quarterly discretionary payouts. Do you recognize these numbers?" I scanned the screen. The figures were high. Too high. I recognized the format, though. I'd written the original structure nearly a year ago. But this was altered. My original plan was performance-based. These look discretionary. Subjective. "They are," she confirmed. "All routed through Greg's sign-off, including a $28,000 payout to his cousin. Do you know anyone named Michael Lyman?" I exhaled slowly. "Unfortunately, yes. He ran one of our failed warehouse pilot programs last year. Quit after 6 weeks." Elaine sat back in her chair. "We received a whistleblower call last night," she said. "Anonymous. Sent us documentation, emails, screenshots, even a vendor contract with Greg's digital signature next to a voided compliance clause." My throat felt dry. "And you think it was me?" "No," she said flatly. "I think it was someone who wanted to protect the company, but also someone with access to the right threads. I know Greg didn't write those policies. You did." I didn't respond. "Did you know he was planning to replace you?" I looked her in the eye. "Yes." "Why didn't you say anything?" "I did," I said calmly. He laughed. Elaine didn't smile. She simply nodded like that confirmed something she already believed. "We're doing a formal review," she continued, "and I want you to stay in place for now. Quietly. Keep doing your job. But I'll need a report from you. Everything you handled directly in the last 6 months. Any changes Greg made that didn't go through the regular approval channels." I paused. "That list might be long." "Good," she said. "Send it by Monday." She stood then, dismissing me. No handshake, no thank you. Just, "Don't talk to him about this." Not yet. When I stepped back onto my floor, Greg was standing outside his office, laughing too loudly with someone from finance. He glanced at me. The smirk was still there. He had no idea what I'd just walked out of. "Everything good?" he asked, that same fake-friendly tone. "Fine," I said. "Elaine just had a few questions." He frowned for half a second. Just a flicker, then nodded. "Probably about the vendor stuff. I've got it under control." "Sure," I said. "Of course." The next 2 days were a blur. I stayed late Friday night, combing through emails, shared drives, budget folders, finding just how many places Greg had cut corners, moved numbers, bypassed compliance. I didn't send anything yet. I just documented. Every edit, every missing approval, every conversation that had felt off at the time, but now made perfect sense. I didn't speak to anyone, but people started speaking to me. Rachel from accounting popped her head into my office. "Hey, is it true they're replacing you?" "Why would you think that?" I asked evenly. She hesitated. "Saw a job post. Someone sent it around." I smiled slightly. Could have been a glitch. She laughed awkwardly, then sobered. "Be careful, okay?" I nodded. "You too." On Sunday evening, I sat in my apartment surrounded by files and printed invoices. I should have felt exhausted, angry, burned out. But all I felt was this calm clarity I hadn't known in years. They had tried to cut me out quietly. They forgot who had built the framework they were still standing on. And now? Now they were about to learn that removing a keystone doesn't just make a crack. It brings the whole structure down. Tomorrow was Monday. And Gregory's laugh? It wouldn't survive the day. Monday morning felt different the moment I stepped out of the elevator. There was a chill in the air, not from the building's ventilation, but from the way people moved. Faster, quieter, like something was off, but no one had the full picture yet. Just whispers, half-seen emails. The tension that builds before a storm finally cracks open. I walked straight to my office. My inbox was already full. Subject lines with words like URGENT, follow-up needed, and board request. Some were from departments I barely interacted with. Others were from people who usually avoided my name entirely. The first email I opened was from HR. "Anna, please report to conference room B at 10:30 a.m. for a follow-up discussion. Internal audit ongoing. Please do not discuss this request with anyone." It wasn't signed by anyone I recognized. Just a title. Director, Corporate Compliance and Risk. By 10:15, I was seated in conference room B with a closed laptop and a copy of my weekend report in a neatly labeled folder. I didn't dress for war, but I didn't dress to blend in either. I wore a black blouse, no jewelry, no perfume. Just quiet authority. The room slowly filled. 2 HR reps, a compliance officer. And then, without introduction, Gregory walked in. He didn't expect me to be there. He froze for half a breath before smiling like nothing was out of place. "Hey, everyone," he said, sliding into the seat opposite mine. "Let's keep this quick." One of the HR reps, a woman named Jules, cleared her throat. "Gregory, we've been asked to conduct a preliminary review of recent financial and operational decisions tied to vendor management and internal policy deviation. We've received documentation over the weekend that requires clarification." Gregory laughed, lightly at first, then with that familiar dismissiveness that had become his trademark. "Okay, well, I'm sure we can clear up whatever this is. Probably a miscommunication." Jules didn't blink. "We'll be starting with a vendor list dated February to June, specifically Venmar Logistics." At that, his jaw tensed. "And Anna," she continued, turning to me, "your report indicates you were not involved in the decision to reinstate Venmar after termination?" I handed her the folder. "All details are included. I flagged them as non-compliant in December. The decision to reinstate them bypassed normal protocol." Gregory leaned forward, his tone sharper now. I had discretionary authority. "Within approved budget," I said quietly, "and within compliance guidelines. This fell outside both." He narrowed his eyes at me. "You're seriously sitting here pretending you didn't know about any of this?" "I'm not pretending," I said calmly. "I'm presenting facts." Jules opened the folder and began reviewing. The compliance officer beside her scribbled notes rapidly. The room stayed cold for the next 30 minutes. Every document I'd submitted was reviewed out loud. Every signature line, every discrepancy, every missing timestamp. By the end of the meeting, Gregory had stopped interrupting. He sat back in his chair, arms folded, face taut with quiet panic he couldn't quite hide. When the meeting ended, Jules stood first. "We'll be escalating this to the executive committee. For now, please refrain from accessing vendor accounts or authorizing financial transactions until further notice." Gregory's voice cracked slightly. "You're freezing me out?" "It's a temporary restriction," she said, pending further review. By 1 p.m., word had spread. Not the details, just enough of the headlines to trigger whispers in the hallways and hushed conversations over coffee machines. People who hadn't spoken to me in months suddenly wanted to check in. Even the CFO stopped by my office. No questions, just a quiet, "Good to see you holding steady." By 3:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Elaine Hastings. "Executive review at 4. We need you present." No explanation, no pleasantries, just a time and expectation. The boardroom was half full when I arrived. Elaine, 2 senior partners, and the general counsel. I took a seat at the far end. Gregory was already there. He looked smaller somehow, sweating slightly even though the room was cool. Elaine opened her tablet. "Gregory," she said crisply, "we've reviewed the documentation submitted over the weekend. There are clear signs of policy violations, including unsanctioned bonuses, vendor reinstatements without due diligence, and use of discretionary powers outside authorized limits." He opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. "Don't interrupt. You'll be allowed to respond. But first, Anna?" She looked at me. "Can you confirm your report is accurate to the best of your knowledge?" I met her eyes. "Yes, and I have backup copies of every document, including approval chains, email logs, and timestamps." Gregory looked like he'd swallowed glass. Elaine turned back to him. "We've decided to place you on administrative leave, effective immediately. There will be a full investigation. You are not to access internal systems. Your credentials are already being deactivated." The room went still. He stood up too quickly, knocking his chair back. "This is insane," he spat. "You're taking her word over mine? She's setting me up?" "No," Elaine said sharply. "You set yourself up. She just refused to cover for you." He looked at me then, really looked, like he finally understood what I had done, and what I hadn't said out loud yet. But I didn't flinch. I just tilted my head slightly. These things happen. That night, I sat in my apartment watching the city glow against the windows. Gregory was out, but I knew better than to celebrate too soon. People like him didn't disappear quietly. Still, the laugh, the one he gave me when I first showed him the job posting, it was gone now, replaced by silence. And in some ways, silence was even louder. The office felt different without Gregory. Lighter in some ways, but heavier in others. His laugh was gone, yes. His forced authority. His smug, offhand remarks. But what remained, what lingered, was harder to name. It wasn't noise anymore. It was quiet. Careful. Watching. That first morning after his suspension, I arrived to find the lights already on in my department. Files slightly rearranged. Coffee half brewed in the break room. Someone had been there before me, and not for work. I checked my desk. Everything looked untouched. But I still changed my passwords. Every system, every login, every backup folder. It wasn't paranoia, it was protocol and survival. By 9 a.m., I received an internal memo. Interim oversight of operations to be shared between Anna Reed and CFO until further board decision. No fanfare, no congratulations, just a single-line update. But in an office like ours, tone was everything. People noticed. By lunch, I had received 3 Slack messages from colleagues who hadn't spoken to me in months. Congrats, I think. Well-deserved. Ignore the noise. Let me know if you need anything. Not everyone's happy, FYI. The last one stuck with me. At 3:20 p.m., I walked past the glass conference room on my way to IT and caught 2 department heads whispering behind half-closed blinds. One of them, Jenna, turned and made eye contact. Then quickly looked away. Jenna had been promoted under Gregory. She never liked me. Said I made her nervous. The strange thing about winning, if you could even call this winning, is how quickly it isolates you. You become a symbol, not a person. You stop being someone people eat lunch with and start being someone they tiptoe around. Because you might be the next boss. Because you got someone fired. Because you saw what they pretended not to. And some of them weren't ready to forgive you for surviving. That week, meetings became quieter, shorter. The way people looked at me changed, some with cautious respect, others with thinly veiled resentment. I kept to myself, focused on my review tasks, and tried to stay grounded. I double-checked vendor contracts, sent gentle reminders about compliance standards, flagged outdated SOPs. On paper, I was doing exactly what the board expected. But beneath that, I was scanning for something else. Signs that Gregory's influence hadn't left with him. And I found it. In small, stupid places. Outdated templates being re-uploaded, budget drafts missing metadata, a recurring email CC'd to a dummy account that didn't belong to anyone currently employed. The kind of subtle sabotage that doesn't scream, but whispers. I reported everything. Not dramatically. Not in all company threads. Quietly. To the right people. Documented and dated. Then on Thursday afternoon, I found it. A shared drive folder, hidden in plain sight, labeled Q3 projections, but filled with backup spreadsheets Greg had created to justify next quarter's hiring cuts. My team was first on the list. The role I held. The people I mentored. Replaced with cheaper titles and vague job descriptions. It wasn't new. The file was last modified 2 weeks before he posted my job online. I stared at it for a long time. He'd been planning to gut my entire department. Quietly, incrementally. Replace us all, one by one, with cheaper labor and call it restructuring. I emailed it to myself. Then backed it up to my encrypted drive. Then I sat there, staring out the window at the city below. Was I angry? Of course. But more than that, I was tired. Tired of fighting fires that other people set. Tired of building things only to have someone else come along and try to erase the blueprint. Tired of being viewed as a threat for simply doing my job too well. That night, I walked home instead of taking the train. Just walked. 10 blocks in the cold with nothing but the sound of my heels against concrete and the weight of knowing too much. I thought about leaving, about sending in a resignation letter that simply read, "Clean up your own mess." But something in me refused. Not because I needed their approval, not because I wanted a title, because I was done watching people like Gregory rise on the backs of everyone else's silence. At midnight, I opened my notebook and started writing. Not just facts this time, but names, patterns, what people had said, what they hadn't said. I made a list. Who attended Greg's unofficial Friday meetings? Who benefited most from the discretionary bonuses? Who signed off on budget changes without ever asking questions? They thought removing Greg would be enough. But rot doesn't start at the surface. It grows underneath. In shadows. In whispered alliances. In fear. I wasn't just holding a file now. I was holding proof of a culture. And the next time someone tried to smile to my face while hiding a knife behind their back, I'd be ready. Monday started like any other. At least it tried to. I arrived early, before most lights were on, before the coffee machines had kicked in. The building always felt different before 8 a.m., like it hadn't put its mask on yet. The front desk receptionist glanced at me and then quickly looked away. I made a mental note. I was learning to notice the little things. Body language, silence, avoidance. When I got to my office, there was a sticky note on my chair. HR meeting, 10 a.m., room 407, no agenda listed. That was the first sign. The second came at 9:05 a.m. when I tried to access the shared project folder for Q4 and found my permissions revoked. Not expired. Revoked. I checked my other folders. Same thing. Then I opened Slack. Gone. My entire history. Every message I'd written or received since joining the company. I didn't panic. I didn't run to IT. I just took a slow breath, stood and walked across the floor to the HR office like I was going to any other meeting. Because I already knew. Someone was trying to erase me. Inside room 407, 2 HR reps waited. Not the familiar ones. These were new. External consultants brought in during sensitive transitions. One of them, a tall man in a dark gray suit, gave a thin smile. "Anna, thank you for coming." I sat, folding my hands in my lap. He began reading from a printed sheet. "There have been concerns raised about your recent access to sensitive files. Some employees have reported that you've been collecting internal documents without prior authorization." I said nothing. "Additionally," he continued, "there have been mentions of notes, lists of names, dates, kept outside of company systems." He looked up like he expected me to explain. I didn't. Finally, the second rep, a woman named Carla, leaned forward. "Anna, we're here to ensure that everyone feels safe and respected in this work environment. We want to be sure that no one feels targeted." That was the word. Targeted. Not unethical, not dishonest, just uncomfortable, because nothing threatens a broken system more than someone who keeps receipts. I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table. "Here's a full report of what I've gathered," I said. "Everything is time-stamped with references to policy." Nothing was obtained through unauthorized means. The man opened it. Carla skimmed it. Slowly, their posture changed. I kept speaking. Calm, even, unshaken. "If anyone feels uncomfortable, it's likely because they were part of decisions that couldn't survive transparency. I'm not targeting anyone. I'm just not protecting them either." Neither of them responded. After a moment, Carla asked quietly, "Did you send this to the board?" "Not yet," I said, "but I will, if necessary." The man exhaled slowly. "You understand this complicates things." "No," I corrected. "It clarifies them." When I left the room, the floor was buzzing. People were moving quickly, glancing at me, then looking away. Someone had obviously leaked the HR meeting. By lunchtime, I had 3 missed calls from unknown numbers. By 2 p.m., I received a calendar invite from Elaine Hastings. Subject line, "Closed door session. Board plus legal only." 4 p.m., I didn't hesitate. I replied, "Confirmed." At 3:59 p.m., I walked into the executive boardroom alone. No assistants, no folders, just the weight of every documented truth I'd been forced to carry. Elaine stood when I entered. So did the general counsel, the CFO, 2 board members I didn't know well. And in the corner, unexpectedly, sat Mr. Hanley, the company's founder. Retired 10 years ago. He hadn't been seen in the office since. He nodded at me. "Anna." I nodded back. "Sir." Elaine gestured for me to sit. She didn't waste time. "We've reviewed your documentation," she began. "What you've uncovered extends well beyond Gregory's missteps." I said nothing. She continued. "Bonus manipulation, falsified reviews, replaced staff with contractors tied to shell accounts. Even Greg's cousin was drawing a salary after resigning." The CFO spoke up next. "You were on that list, too. He had already coded your replacement as in training under another name. You were gone weeks ago on paper." The room fell quiet for a moment. Mr. Hanley broke the silence. "I built this company on the backs of people who worked hard, told the truth, and didn't play games." He looked directly at me. "I want you to stay." Elaine stepped in. "We're offering you the role of head of strategic operations, full authority to restructure all processes flagged in your report." I didn't respond right away, because I was no longer just reacting. I was deciding. Finally, I nodded. "On one condition." Everyone looked up. "No private conversations, no backdoors. If I find another fake account, silent budget cut, or internal retaliation, I go straight to federal auditors. No warnings next time." Mr. Hanley smiled faintly. "Fair." It's strange how quickly things change on the surface. Titles, emails, org charts, but how slowly they shift underneath. In the 2 weeks after that boardroom meeting, I received a new title, a new office, and a dozen emails filled with cautious congratulations. The same people who once avoided eye contact in the hallway now paused to ask how I was settling in. Some offered help. Others offered nothing but smiles too wide to trust. And still, Gregory's shadow lingered. Not because he was physically there. His badge had been deactivated, his personal items boxed and delivered to a courier. He was officially gone. But people don't disappear with the swipe of a badge. Power doesn't vanish just because the nameplate is gone. Some of his people were still here. Quiet, well-dressed, and loyal to the version of leadership that protected them. They didn't sabotage anything outright. They didn't need to. Delay a signature here. Misplace a document there. Speak in vague generalities during meetings. And then look surprised when things stalled. They wanted me to fail silently. The first thing I did was make a list of names. Not enemies, not friends, just patterns. Who showed up when the work got hard? Who deflected accountability? Who asked smart questions when no one else would? I didn't fire anyone. Not yet. Instead, I restructured weekly operations reviews. Everyone's progress, visible, cross-departmental, time-stamped. No one could hide behind the confusion of email chains or jargon-laced memos anymore. The rot, if it remained, had to operate in the light now. A few people quit. Not loudly. Just quiet resignations and half-hearted exit interviews. One by one. Some were Gregory loyalists, some weren't. But all of them had benefited from silence. And I had taken that away from them. A week later, I stood at the front of the same conference room where I'd once sat, blindsided and quiet, across from a man who laughed at the idea of replacing me. This time, I was running the leadership roundtable. New agendas, new tone, no theatrics, just direction, data, decency. I won't pretend this past month hasn't shaken trust across departments, I told the room. We can either rebuild it together or we can keep pretending everything was fine before. Your choice. No applause, no backpats, just thoughtful silence. And for the first time, I felt something shift. Not fear, not respect either. Something deeper, acknowledgement. One afternoon, I walked past Jenna, the department head who once looked through me like I was a placeholder, and she actually stopped me. "Hey," she said. "I wanted to say, I didn't expect things to move so fast, but you've been steady. That matters more than people realize." I didn't smile, but I nodded. Thanks. Because I didn't need praise. I needed people to do the work. That Friday, I left the office at 6:03 p.m., the earliest I'd left in months. I passed the break room and caught sight of myself in the glass reflection. Same face, different presence. Not someone who had been spared. Not someone who had been saved. Someone who had survived on her own terms. When I got home, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and opened my notebook. The one I'd started when everything fell apart. It was almost full now. Dates, incidents, wins, losses. People who surprised me, for better and worse. Lessons. So many lessons. On the last page, I wrote, "Sometimes the worst thing they can do to you is underestimate you. And sometimes it's the best gift they'll ever give you." Gregory never reached out. He didn't send an apology, didn't ask for a reference, didn't make excuses. But I heard from a former colleague that he'd been trying to shop his resume around. No one was biting. Word gets around faster than people think, especially when you've burned every bridge and still think it was someone else who lit the match. And as for me, I didn't get revenge. Not in the way movies or headlines like to show it. There was no dramatic takedown, no viral video, no public speech that made the room gasp. Just silence, consequences, and clarity. I didn't destroy him. He did that all by himself. All I did was make sure the truth had somewhere to land. By the end of the quarter, the board formally offered me the permanent role. Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations. Not just a title. Real authority. A real seat at the table. I didn't say yes right away. I asked for 3 things. 1. Full transparency on hiring and compensation policies. 2. A mentorship program for women and underrepresented employees. 3. A company-wide audit of internal ethics practices. They agreed, not because they were generous, because they couldn't afford to lose me again. The truth is, I don't know if this company will ever be what it pretends to be in its mission statement. But I know who I am now. I am not just a survivor. I am not just someone who stuck it out. I am a builder.